right now. Today is the day that you choose to change the rest of your life. It is time to turn your setback into the greatest comeback story ever told, and nobody is more capable than you. This is the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast, the future #1 weight loss podcast in the world. I am your host, Donato Russo. I hope you enjoy the show today. If this is your first time here and you enjoy the show, please subscribe and spread the word of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast wherever you are and to whomever will listen. If you'd like to connect on social media or wherever else, check out my Linktree page, Linktree/the Ranting Weight Watcher. Let's connect today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I promise you, this is episode 220 of the Ranting Weight Watcher podcast. Do not switch that dial. Do not go anywhere. This is not a sports talk Yankees talk show by any means. Listen, I am a problem solver by heart, right? So when I see there is an issue, I look for a solution, right? And so for now, with what I have in the house, there was a problem, and the mirror that is behind me was reflecting the lights that are in front of me here. And so when I would move to the left or right on the screen here, you would sometimes see the light that's in front of me shining back into the camera. So this drove me crazy for the last 2 episodes, and I was being really stiff and kind of afraid to even move because I was strategically sitting in a way so that I could block the light being reflected back with my own body, so to speak, or the chair behind me, right? But as I get going and as I get emotionally involved, I naturally shift to the left and right. I talk with my hands here, and things just happen, right? So I went looking for what I had around the house, and I am covering the mirror with this Yankee. It's actually a Snuggie. I don't know if you remember a while back, everybody was going crazy for Snuggies. So it's like a blanket with sleeves. So you put it on and you put your arms through the sleeves and then you wrap it around you like a blanket. And everybody was going crazy for those. Now they have much better things. They're like really, really oversized hoodies. And it feels like you're wearing a blanket. Literally, it'll go from head to at least your knees. That's how big this hoodie is. And they're made to be extremely warm. But anyway, for now, maybe some of you guys don't like that there's Yankees everywhere right now. And because, the Yankees are a baseball team that is loved or hated, right? There's nothing really in between when it comes to the Yankees. It seems to be I root for my team and everybody against the Yankees, or I love the Yankees, right? So that's what it's going to be for now. I will find another solution. Maybe I'll get some kind of banner that says, do the freaking work. And we'll see how that goes, right? So anyway, let's not waste any more time on that. Let's get into this! Journey updates. So for the week of February 16th through February 22nd, total amount of steps taken, 77,146. That is an average steps per day of 11,024. Now you see there's a slight stats drop here. And that's because of one extra rest day, just so you know. I usually take 2 rest days a week, but for the last few weeks where you've seen the higher numbers, I've only been taking 1 rest day. So last week I actually took the 2nd rest day, and a lot of that has to do with knee pain and not wanting to make it any worse, kind of a thing like that. I'm mostly managing right now until this. I should have never stopped taking this supplement. It was really helping my knee. And for whatever reason, I got it in my head that I no longer needed it, right? I started a supplement way back. It's called proteolytic enzymes, but it is for digestive health. But there's some ingredient in there that helps joints, right? So I was taking them primarily to help my knee because I have arthritis in my right knee. And I had taken them for years and my knee was doing fantastic. But in the process of me starting to me now, we're talking about 100 pounds lost or 120 pounds lost, something like that. Additionally, from the day that I started taking these supplements. So at some point, say 6-7 months ago, I got it in my head that I no longer need to spend money on this supplement because, they get expensive. Supplements get expensive. This one particularly is $1 a day. Okay. That's per dose, $1 per dose. Okay. So it becomes like this. Do I really need it? Kind of a thing. And the funny thing is here, this is what you call a lesson learned. I took it, and the person who told me about them said that, listen, you're not going to feel any difference for 3 months. So do yourself a favor and buy 3 months worth of this supplement right up front so you can at least commit to it. Because if you buy it as you go, then you might say to yourself, well, it's not doing anything. So I did what she said. I bought 3 months up front. And I took it religiously. I took the dosage every single day. It's very specific instructions. You take them before anything. So you have to take it on an empty stomach. And I did that for basically every day. And it was going to be for the entire 3 months. About 2 weeks before I was hitting the 3 month mark, right? So let's say it's about the 8 week mark or the 10 week mark in that case. So we're at the 10 week mark and all of a sudden I'm walking and I realize I don't feel any pain anymore. And it's funny how you get so used to having pain. It's just a part of life that when it's no longer there, it hits you like a ton of, oh my God, this feels good, So again, years go by, 100 more pounds lost, and I got it in my head. I no longer needed it. It took, say, 6 months to really start feeling the effects returning. So I had it such a built up in my system, I think, that once I stopped taking them and stopped buying them, it really took 6 months for the pain to return from the arthritis in my knee. So now I'm literally just finishing up the end of this week. So it's the 23rd today that I'm recording this. The end of this week, Saturday, is going to be 4 weeks officially that I'm taking it again. And I will continue on, and hopefully this pain goes away around the same, even if it takes 10 weeks, just like it did in the initial time, I'll be okay. So long as I get to that point where I'm feeling pain-free, because then I could get back to strength training, because I just can't foresee doing any kind of strength training and putting extra weight on these joints. It makes me nervous. All right, so we're staying away from that. I am walking. I haven't stopped walking, and I'll stick to that until we can manage, the knee issue and go from there, right? So the amount of miles total walked, again, is another drop in statistics here. Last week, we were upwards, pretty close to 40, and we're here at 33 miles total last week. That's an average miles a day of just over 4 3/4 miles a day. So the extra day off, whether it paid off or not, I don't know. But the scale result and related to this work, so if we're looking at this as a direct scale result, where I've told you guys, it's not, what you go for is not going to always show up, right? So my stats went down, but the scale result came anyway, right? So in that was a 1.8 pound loss. I weighed in at 224.4, 1.8 pound lost. Pounds remaining to get to the 200 pound goal I set 6 years ago is 28.8 pounds. We're forging ahead. No stopping now. It's all gas, no brakes. Okay. So last week, I brought up quantity versus quality. And I explained to you how I started this journey and how many of us start this journey about eating the most amount of food stuff and not really understanding nutrition and everything else. And I told you guys about a book that changed my mind completely after realizing I was kind of stagnant for 10 months. And I hope this works. So let's see here how if it works. But I'm going to do some finagling here so you can see what I'm talking about. All right. I think it worked. All right. So this is the book. It's Unlock Your Macrotype, and it's by Christine Hronik. Okay. Now, the first thing I want to say about this book, I can't say enough good things about this book because nutrients or nutrition in general, it was something that I didn't understand. And macronutrients seemed like in my head something that people who spend 8 hours a day in the gym, they pay attention to that. Not people like me. I'm not good enough yet. That was my attitude going into it, right? It's not that I didn't desire to do it. It was just a false sense of I don't belong here. This is not for me. I'm not of this skill level yet. And it's funny what preconceived notions in your mind do to you, right? And I dabbled into it here and there, just trying to figure it out, trying to understand. Understanding nutrition is almost like another language entirely because there's losing weight and then there's nutrition, right? And the whole world is focused on losing weight. And there are ways to lose weight that are healthy, and there are ways to lose weight that are unhealthy. And I've done both. And now since I've done both, I'm telling you guys there's a better way. There's a better way that doesn't feel like you're constantly failing. Because there's one huge difference between losing weight and concentrating on nutrition, right? So when you're losing weight, you're following the directions of somebody and you're trying to stay within the guidelines of a program. I'm not telling you this is wrong. I'm saying that if you have that quantity mindset that I talked about last week, where you want to eat as much food as possible, you're making choices with the perceived notion that because these foods are less calorically or less points or whatever you're following, because they're less, they must be healthy. And one of the hardest lessons I learned is that's not the case. It's not the case that just because the calories are lower, the points are lower, whatever it is, does not make it healthy. However, concentrating on that does cause the scale to go down, right? Because you're restricting the number of foods you eat compared to when you started. It's that simple. So you can drop weight concentrating on things like this. But concentrating on nutrition, it changes a number of things. It changes the hold that food has. Because I've spoken on this podcast many times that food is not designed with our good in mind. Food is designed for you to be a constant consumer. All you want is to constantly eat it, and they know how to make that happen. Okay? And I'm not really going to get into the details of all that because I've done that many times in this podcast. So the one thing this book teaches you is, number one, what are macronutrients, all right? And what happens when you abide by the law and you transgress the law. Now, those are not the exact words. I'm just trying to break it down for you here. So the general idea of this book is there are 3 essential nutrients that make up the majority of the food we eat, right? And that's protein, fat, carbohydrate. And as you go, so one of those three things, every single one of us has one of those things needs to be the dominant essential nutrient. Okay? So for some people, carbohydrates should be the primary source of their food intake. For some people, protein should be the primary source of food intake. And as crazy as this sounds, as nuts, and because this is going to break you mentally because you've been taught something so long is dangerous for you. But now more than ever in 2025, things are being exposed right now. And if you're paying attention, you're going to see you've been told a whole lot of lies to make sure that a whole lot of companies are getting a whole lot of profit at the detriment of your health, by the way. So anyway, there are other people. Now, I don't know, when you think about the population, the percentages of each dominance, I don't know that. But there are other people that their dominant nutrient is fat. They are primarily fueled by fat. And as crazy as that sounds, it's real. Another thing this book explains is what happens if you give the body more of what nutrient you feel like eating versus what you should be feeding it. That's another thing this book teaches you. And another valuable lesson I learned from this book. It teaches you the consequences of eating for what you feel like or what you're in the mood to eat versus what you are supposed to be eating in that moment, right? Now, the point I'm making here is, as you read through this book, you're going to come to a questionnaire. Now, before I go any further with that, there are ways to figure out how should I go about learning macronutrients. There are ways, there are people that have certain insurance coverages that would pay for dietitians, nutritionists, and all that stuff. And even WW, if your insurance will pay for it, has now nutritionists available on staff, and they could give you a rudimentary starting point for macronutrients. So if your insurance pays for that, by all means, feel free to go with that. But if you're like me and your insurance wouldn't pay for that, this book is a wonderful book, okay? And another thing I'll say about this book is the author, Christine Hronik, who came on the show, and it's somewhere in the episodes of 170 something. So say 170 to 179, somewhere in there, she joined the podcast and we talked about her book. And she wrote this book with women in mind. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean there was nothing really for me? There was a lot of the stuff that basically I didn't need to know because I don't really deal with hormonal issues. But my audience is like in the 95th percentile female. So I will promote this book with literally no gain to myself. Literally no gain to myself. I don't get some cut every time you guys buy this book. But I know this book helped me, and this whole podcast is about helping everyone else find out the same things I found out, however long it takes them. But she wrote this book. This woman is a food scientist and chemical engineer. So if there's anybody that knows what the food we buy on the shelves does to our body, it's this woman. And she especially knows what it does to women. So a big part of this is, this is why I say I believe every woman on this planet should read this book. Because at some point in your life, you're going to be having to concentrate on what hormones are doing to your body, right? Now, a lot of people won't want to admit this, but she said it on the show. Hormones are affected by nutrition. Part of the reason for this book. If you give yourself an overload of one nutrient because you're in the mood to eat it versus another, you're actually creating a bigger problem, hormonally and physically, right? Your body. Now, a lot of people take this information and say, oh, yeah, my hormones are growing crazy. I got this, I got this whole problem and now it's harder to lose weight. You could say all of those things. But have you done everything? If this book exists and you haven't read it, have you done everything to try to nutritionally tame the hormones that you've been told are something that just happens? What if, just what if, every bit of the hormonal issues women have are a direct result of how they nourish the body? What if? Now, you may read this book and say, no, none of this applies to me. And hey, God bless you. If I could read this book is written to women. I could read this book and I took something from it, and you could read it and say, none of this applies to me, fine. God bless you. Go on your way. But as you read this book, there is a questionnaire. And you're going to answer the questions of this questionnaire. When you get to the final score, there's going to be one questionnaire, and then you take the score of that questionnaire and you do the second questionnaire. When you get that final score, it's going to put you into what's called a macro type. And there's 5 of them. And I'm going to show them to you right now. This is an actual snippet of the book itself, okay? And so just to give you an example, when I filled out the questionnaires, this is where I scored. I was a protein-fueled, low-carb macro type. That means the recommendation of what I should eat should be 37.5% protein, 36% fat, and 26% carbs. This is looking very much like a keto lifestyle, right? That I would benefit mostly from a ketogenic lifestyle. You guys could take it and you could score in any one of these other 4 categories here. This last one, this 6th one, is just USDA guidelines, not part of the questionnaire. But there's carb-fueled macro type. There's protein-fueled macro type. Protein-fueled low-carb macro type. Fat-fueled macro type. Fat-fueled low-carb macro type. Right? So you take the questionnaire and you have a starting point. You know, if you're someone like me who didn't have that kind of insurance coverage that would cover the whole dietitian, whether it was through Weight Watchers or some other thing, you could start here. Now, there are ways we can convert all this information into real life scenarios, into how do I translate this into choosing what to eat, right? And that all begins with a baseline. And we're going to get into that in a second. Another thing that I want to talk to you guys about before I get into what a baseline is, another thing I want to talk to you guys about is another change I discovered in the Weight Watchers app. And that is the ability to add calories. So the one thing that makes being on Weight Watchers specifically a little difficult when dealing with macronutrients is that not everything has points, right? So you have 0-point foods. So this kind of throws things off, okay? And it makes macros a little hard to deal with. Now, do you need to do this right away? No, absolutely not, because I'm sure that the majority of 0-point foods are whole foods now, the overwhelming majority, okay? So if you're choosing those foods, and even if you're overeating them a little bit, they're going to be better than what you used to choose, okay? And that's what happens typically. Every time the plan changes and we start to see this is 0 points, that is 0 points, it's a guidepost to say this food is better for you than stuff that has points, right? It doesn't mean you can eat it limitlessly and expect to lose weight. And I think everybody who listens to me understands that by now, okay? But now there is the ability, and I don't know if you guys are an update away, but I have it on my app. I took some screenshots with my phone, and I'm going to bring that up now. So this is a screenshot from my phone. This is basically the area where you track your food, okay? And if you scroll down to where the macronutrients are in this area here, you'll notice there's an add or remove button. Now, if I click that button, I have the option to add 2 new things. And one of them is calories, and the other one is added sugar. Now, if I click the plus sign, I click save. Now I could see calories is sitting there. We can use calorie calculators. Now, with the idea that certain foods are 0 points, we can use calorie calculators, and then we can translate those percentages on the macro types, these percentages. We can translate them to grams, which would make tracking here more easily. And in the coming weeks, we can do that. That's not a problem. Because I want to guide you guys in the right way. Because the last thing I want is for you guys to have these tools available to you and not know how to use them. We're going to go in deep here. I never said this would be easy. And you are all worth the work. And if I think you're worth the work and I'm sitting here talking about it and you don't think it's worth the work, I think that's a problem. But that's for another conversation for another day. But you'll be able to see rudimentarily where we are at now by adding all of those things. So I mentioned a baseline. And I'm going to use this screenshot here so that we can go from here. What I want from you guys, I want you to pick out a full week right now, whether that's, if you want to do that on your next weigh-in day, like start from your next weigh-in day, or if you want to do that like Sunday to Saturday, however you see fit here to do this, you choose. So let's say you do it like I did it, and you go from weigh-in day to weigh-in day kind of thing. So that would be Saturday to Friday. Friday would be the last day of the week, okay? When I created my baseline, I ate exactly as I had been eating all along. I literally changed nothing. And that's what I want from you guys, because a big part of this is the realization of what you've been doing. And when you make changes blindly, it's the worst possible thing because there's nothing to compare it to. Nothing. And all of this is so much worth more. You learn so much more about yourself if you do it the way I say it. And going forward, this podcast is going to demand excellence. Excellence in tracking specifically, because macronutrients mean nothing if you're, number one, if you're one of those people that doesn't track a food because it's 0 points, macronutrients are going to mean nothing. Okay? If you're skipping here and there because you're embarrassed that something is on there, macronutrients are going to mean nothing. So I need you, hold on. And if you're not weighing and measuring, if you're eyeballing serving sizes, macronutrients are going to mean nothing. They're going to mean nothing. So everything I've said to you so far is useless if you ignore this part here. Okay? So it's all about what happens next. The demand is that everything is weighed or measured. Everything. I don't want you to change what you eat whatsoever. I just want you to weigh and measure it. If it has a barcode, if what you eat has a barcode, zap the barcode, put it on a scale, measure it in grams, and put it in there. And what happens is we start to fill out these macronutrients. We start to fill them out. And at the end of the week, we're going to see what you like. We're going to see you eat a certain way. And if you go out and buy that book and you see that how you're eating now, this is the realization I made. I sat here and believed with all my heart that I was eating way more protein than carbs or fat. And in reality is I was eating 3 times the carbs than I was the protein. That's the eye-opening part, right? And this is what happens only when you're dedicated to yourself to creating a baseline based on how you eat now, okay? Without making any changes whatsoever because you're embarrassed or whatever the case may be. No, literally the best lesson comes from seeing what you've been doing. That's the best lesson. And if I could help you recreate that, then the educational change that comes from that is going to be transformational. I told you I was eating 3 times as many carbs as I was protein. This was carbs between 600 and 700 grams per day. Another thing you'll learn is carbs are literally in everything. And it doesn't matter that it's a fruit. It doesn't matter that it's a piece of bread. Carbs are carbs in your body. And if you're aiming for macronutrients to be a certain way, it doesn't matter that the carbs came from fruit versus bread versus rice versus pasta. Doesn't matter. So I had to make extreme change, but I knew that I was not good with extreme change. I needed to do this over time, and that's where I'd guide you going forward. If you notice that what the book tells you, what you should be doing, and you're way off of that, you can't instantly flip a switch and be there. You may not mentally be ready for it. You might have to work on incremental steps to get there. I brought it up last week, 8-week increments. If you're like me and you're eating 600 grams of carbs per day, so you decide for the next 8 weeks, I'm going to eat 400 grams of carbohydrates. Because the book tells me I need to be at 153, 150, whatever it is. Right? So if the book tells me I need to be at 150 and I'm at 600, I know I need to pick stepping points, right? And that's what I did. That's what I did. And that's what you're going to do. But it starts with you creating a baseline and not making any changes. Seeing the baseline for what it is, getting the education necessary of what you've been doing, and doing it more accurately than you've been in your entire time on Weight Watchers. Everything gets weighed. An apple gets weighed. A banana gets weighed. Everything. Everything. It all matters. All matters. It's very important to see where you're starting and to see where you need to go, because then you know what you're willing to do to make the steps in between. And that's more important than it all. The stepping points. if I went from 600 to 400 and I consistently stayed at 400 for 8 weeks, wouldn't that be an accomplishment? I mean, come on, think about that. Wouldn't that be an accomplishment if I had been eating 600 grams of carbs a day and then consistently for 8 weeks, I did it at 400? That's success. That's measurable success. And how did I accomplish that? I accomplished that by accurately weighing and measuring and accurately tracking, knowing that all the macronutrients count. It doesn't matter that it's a 0-point food. All of them count. And then for the next 8 weeks, I go from 400 to 300. Maybe I want to make a smaller step here. I don't want to go straight to 200 because that's a big. And so when you're looking at individual things, you're going to start to see, well, that one serving of rice, that's 50 grams of carbohydrates there. Can I do without rice this many days a week and then have it this day, and then have something else going on another day? You know, whatever. Like if I eat rice Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then, or don't eat rice Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but then only on Tuesday, Thursday eat rice, and then get rid of some other carb on Tuesday and Thursday. So long as the numbers work out. It's never saying you're going to walk away from this forever. But what you may find, what you may discover, a lot like I discovered. What I discovered was I was just done with it. I was done with putting my whole life on hold, essentially. I was done with putting my life on hold because of a hold that food had on me. I had to get there. You have to get there. We have to make this life we're trying to live, it's so far from weight loss. It's so far. It truly is becoming the greatest version of yourself. Truly is that. You know, RFK recently spoke, and he said something, and it really made me think. He said, a healthy person has a million wishes. I'm paraphrasing here. Has a million wishes. But an unhealthy person just has one wish. When he said this, it hit me. I told you guys many times the story of me on my birthday in January 2019, stepping on the scale and seeing the scale result of 403 pounds. I got hit with some harsh truth that day. And that harsh truth was I nearly ruined everything that gastric bypass had done for me. If you've listened to episode 1, you already know I was 460 pounds, had gastric bypass, went down to 277, and then spent the next 15 years going in the wrong direction, having not learned a single lesson from the entire experience. So that morning, I'm staring down at 403 pounds, and there was no more lying to myself. I was 57 pounds away from having all of the work be gone. 57 pounds. And let's say, for just for the sake of conversation, let's say I gained the rest of that weight back and I didn't make a change then. 460 pounds in 2019 would have been worse than 460 pounds in 2004 when I had the gastric bypass. Why would it have been worse? Because a lot of the weight that was lost, because that change was so extreme, was muscle. Muscle mass was lost big time. in that 180 some odd pound weight drop in just about a year. Muscle mass was the primary source of loss. So if I had gained I got up to 460 pounds again, I would have less muscle mass and more fat. I would be worse off in 2019 at 460 pounds than I was in 2004. And that's just the God's honest truth. I made changes so I don't have to think about that, right? But I can honestly say to you that if I didn't make that, I would be way, way worse. And if I didn't make any changes at all, chances are I'm not here to even give a message at all. Chances are I'm not breathing anymore. That's the reality. We have to start seeing all of this as life and death. There are so many things in this universe that have instant consequence. And you wouldn't dare do those things because you know there's an instant consequence. You wouldn't take a gun that holds 6 bullets, put one in there, spin it, and keep pulling the trigger just to see if you'd put a bullet in your head. You wouldn't do it. Because you know the chance that there's a 1 in 6 chance you're dead. You know the consequence. You wouldn't do it. I think my one wish in this life, in this world, in this universe, is that the same would work for food. Because then people would realize what they're doing to themselves. If you could instantly feel the consequence of the food you put in your body, you would make choices much faster. You would make changes much faster. Because nobody wants to feel like crap. Nobody wants to be in pain. Nobody wants any of that. But the problem is, a lot of the things we eat are poison. We don't want to believe they are because we like the taste. That's the sad truth about it all. We like the taste. Until we start seeing what we're doing for what it is, until we create that moment, because that moment for me on my birthday in 2019, that moment was the moment I had one wish. That was my moment. And if I could help you all get to that one moment in any way, shape, or form, because until you get to that one moment, I don't know, there's no urgency. There's no need. For a lot of people, that one moment comes from some diagnosis. And there's such a thin line here, right? There's such a thin line because you could be right on the edge and say, oh, well, this is it. It is what it is. I'm just going to ride it out until I die. And you just keep making the bad decisions you've been making your entire life without ever connecting the dots and say, my bad decisions are exactly why I'm here. And my life is worth fighting for. And if I just start making the right decisions, I can make the rest of my life the best of my life. That's where we are. How do you get to the point where you just have one wish? That's the goal. I'm hoping that the creation of this baseline and you seeing what you're currently doing can be the catalyst needed to create the change necessary. It's so much, life in general is so much more than where you're going to eat tonight. We're so hyper-focused on the things that seem important. But it's not until when those things don't have a hold on you anymore, that's when you realize there's so many more important things. I really hope that you take my words to heart. I really hope that you do what's necessary to create the baseline that will truly help you with becoming the best version of yourself. I can't force you to do this. I can't force you to see the importance of this. All I can do is sit here and tell you how I discovered its importance. I promise you that if you dedicate yourself to this process, the one thing I could say about my experience is when I finally dedicated myself to this process, the entire world transformed. And it was at my will. At my will. At my saying, this is it. Enough is enough. I got one wish, and I'm going to make that one wish come true. Because that one wish is still possible. No matter how dark, no matter how dreary, no matter how impossible things seem. You know, they say whatever's impossible with man is whatever's impossible with man is possible with God. And just the same, it's the opposite, right? You can't just sit here and pray to God every day and say, God, help me lose weight. God, help me lose weight, and do nothing. You can't do that. Because if there's something that's still possible for you, then you have to do it. And everything I'm pointing out right now is possible for every single one of you. So it's time to stop bullshitting. It's time to start working. It's time to cut all the crap and stop pretending. We need to get to work, and we need to really solve what we've been saying we're trying for the last, God knows, 10, 15, 20 years. Get real. Get going and get to work. It's that simple. Because you know what? If you track with 97% accuracy, if you weigh and measure with 97% accuracy, and you get up and you go and move and you show up for yourself 97% of the time, you can show up with 100% faith in Jesus that He will supply the 3%. Start to work now. Do your share and start to get real transformation. It's time to evolve to become the greatest version of you. It is possible. I love each and every one of you. God bless you all.